She looked straight at me and said, "I don't want a dress from some woman who leeched off a man and called it love. Stop pretending." Then, right there in front of 200 people, she ripped the gown I had made for her with my own hands. 6 months of work, every seam stitched in silence. She shredded it like it meant nothing. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Just stood there, frozen, as if silence itself could blister skin. I wasn't prepared for that kind of cruelty, but what she didn't know was that dress wasn't the only thing I'd brought with me that day. The music kept going. That's what I remember most, even after the sound of torn silk echoed through a silent hall. The string quartet didn't miss a beat. Still soft, still sweet, still playing. I caught the violinist's eyes. He looked confused, but kept moving his bow like this was part of the plan. I stood still. Didn't pick up the fabric she'd ripped from my hands. Didn't call her name. Didn't ask why. I already knew. Some betrayals don't come with a warning. They arrive like a blade to the chest, clean, sudden, and cutting through parts you didn't know could bleed. That was her gift to me, my daughter. She stood on that stage like she was auditioning for a role, wedding gown spotless, voice shaking from rage, not nerves, and she said it again. "I don't need a dress from some woman who lived off her husband's money and faked love. Quit performing." Then she took my gift. The gown I carried in a satin box, pressed and folded like something sacred, and tore it down the middle. The same dress she once said made her feel like royalty. Gone in 10 seconds. Gasps scattered across the room. Someone dropped their champagne. My ex-sister-in-law covered her mouth like she'd witnessed a car crash. Felix, the man who planned the entire event, stood frozen beneath the floral arch, his hands stuck mid-applause. Still, the music played. Still, the room pretended. Still, I stood there motionless. Maybe I'd been part of someone else's show for the past 32 years without knowing. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. My hands stayed by my sides. I turned, and I walked. Every step on the marble floor echoed like a verdict. I didn't hurry. I didn't hide. Backstage, I rolled the lock shut on the prep room door. White walls, sterile, like mess, had never been allowed in. But mess had already arrived. I sat down. No dramatic collapse, just sat. My purse was on the couch, tucked beneath a shawl. Inside was the folder, the one I had drawn up 3 months ago. I took it out and placed it on the vanity in front of me. The penthouse in Lakeview, my 47% ownership of the Whitlow label, a scholarship fund for young women in design, one I had hoped Bianca would one day run. Everything was in there, labeled, listed, legally prepared. The pen was still clipped to the inside flap, and I hadn't signed it. Not yet. I looked at my reflection. Not the makeup, not the earrings, not the hair carefully pinned. Just the woman behind all that. I reached for the pen, then stopped. Not because I was confused. Because suddenly, I was more certain than I'd been in years. She hadn't torn that dress to hurt me. She'd done it because she thought I wouldn't fight back. That's what cut the deepest. Not the insult, the calculation. She knew I'd be most vulnerable then. Doing what mothers always do, giving. I had given her everything. And she still wanted more. She wanted it all. And for the first time in a very long time, I no longer felt the need to protect anyone. I didn't text a friend, didn't call my lawyer, didn't ask what I should do. I just sat, with the facts. The dress was destroyed. The humiliation was public, and silence once again would be mistaken for weakness. But here's what wasn't ruined. I hadn't signed that document. My name, my company, my home, my trust, still mine, not torn, not yet. It was close to 2 a.m. when the knock came. Soft, controlled, no panic, no pleading. I didn't need to ask who it was. Gianna stepped inside, her coat still buttoned, hair damp from the midnight air. She looked at me the way only someone who's known both your victories and your worst mistakes can. Not with pity, but with understanding. I didn't speak. She didn't ask. Her eyes found the folder on the table. She sat down, removed her gloves one finger at a time. Then said, calm and steady, "You didn't sign." I nodded. She didn't smile, but something shifted in her eyes. "Good," she said. "That's what old friends do. They don't need the story. They feel the break in your bones." She poured herself a glass of water, looked back at me, and said, "I always thought Bianca admired your strength. Now I think she mistook it for softness. That's her mistake." I leaned back. Everything ached, but my mind had never felt clearer. I didn't say a word. I just opened the folder, turned page by page. Each line of legal print, a boundary I had almost surrendered. The penthouse, the shares, the fund, all of it, still mine, but I didn't need to read further. I closed the folder gently, not with fury, but with finality. That chapter was over, and the next one was already waiting. Dawn crept in like a whisper. Gianna dozed in the armchair beside me, her breathing soft, shoulders relaxed. I sat upright, watching the city grow lighter through the hotel window. Then my phone buzzed. No caller name, no subject line, just a message that read, "You don't know me, but I owe you something." Attached was a video. Below it, one sentence. "You helped me get through law school. I never forgot. Initials only, GK." I downloaded the file, pressed play, and there she was, Bianca, sitting in a sleek conference room across from a man I recognized. Roman Pierce, ambitious, young, a lawyer who always danced close to the line. Bianca's tone was calm, too calm, smug, confident. I heard my name, then hers, then the word transfer, then notarized, then the worst one, power of attorney. She was planning to forge my consent, to get me to sign without knowing, to outmaneuver me like I was nothing more than an outdated hurdle. And then she laughed, actually laughed, said, "She sign anything if I cry hard enough." I paused the video, not because I couldn't bear to hear more, but because now I didn't need to. The fog had lifted. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was informed. I reached over, touched Gia's arm. She woke instantly, looked at my face, and understood something had shifted. I handed her the phone. She watched the entire clip, silent, focused. When it ended, she exhaled like someone who'd been holding her breath for years. "So that's what this is," she said. "Yes," I said, "that's exactly what this is." I turned back to the table. The folder was still there. I didn't need to sign anything now. I needed to burn it. Not just the papers, the performance, the illusion. Because now I had something better than a transfer of assets. I had evidence, and evidence, when handled with grace, can crack an empire wide open. The morning after the wedding didn't start with a sunrise. It started with a knock at my hotel door. I had just stepped out of the shower, hair wrapped in a towel, robe cinched at my waist. The folder still sat on the table, closed for good. Gianna opened the door. She was dressed head to toe in black, not in mourning but in focus. She carried her laptop, her phone, and that same expression she used to wear before big boardroom battles. No pleasantries, no small talk. She sat down, flipped open her laptop, and asked what time brunch began. 11, I said. Bianca had planned a farewell brunch for her VIP guests. Champagne, mimosas, a carefully crafted exit scene. Her last word, polished and pretty, but that brunch would be more than a soft landing. It would be my moment to give her something back. I handed Gianna the flash drive I'd copied the video onto. She didn't ask how I got it. We both knew there was no sleep between midnight and morning. Every click, every plan, every step had been made with the same precision I once used to build my most intricate gowns. Gianna loaded the file. We checked the audio, tested playback, no glitches. Then she made a call. A woman named Paula, a tech coordinator who'd worked with Felix for years. Professional, efficient, discreet. By 9:30, Paula was at our door. She didn't ask what was on the file. She only asked for the cue. I gave her a timestamp, not at the start of brunch, not during toasts. Just before dessert, when the mood would be light, the attention high, and Bianca's guard at its weakest. Paula nodded once. No fuss, no drama. After she left, Gianna looked at me. "This will change everything," she said. "It already has," I answered. We didn't rehearse. We didn't script a speech. All I had to do was show up. By 11, I was dressed. Dark navy dress. Nothing flashy. Simple heels, hair pulled back. Just enough makeup to hide the fact that I'd spent the night plotting the end of a legacy. The venue buzzed with waiters carrying trays, soft jazz floating through the air, cameras flashing. Bianca was already working the room. Cream silk dress, minimal jewelry. Fake humility like a fragrance she'd sprayed on too heavy. I stood at the back and watched. Her laugh rang a little too loud. Her hugs lasted a little too long. Even her eyes were performing. Felix spotted me from across the room. His mouth tightened. He walked over and leaned in. Paula was set. All he needed was my signal. I gave him a single nod. I didn't sit. I didn't mingle. I stayed at the edge of the room, sipping coffee gone cold in my cup. At 12:23, Bianca took the microphone. She thanked everyone for being part of the most beautiful day of her life. She thanked her planner, her team, even Felix, but not me. Not once. She raised her glass, said something about new beginnings and community, and then announced, "And now, a special little video, a surprise tribute." That was my cue. Felix tapped the control. The room darkened. The screen lit up, and the performance ended. There she was, Bianca on camera, sitting in that boutique conference room, her voice cool, sharp, certain, talking about my assets like they were hers already, walking through plans to mislead me, explaining how she'd forge a document I hadn't signed yet. Then came the line, "She sign anything if I cry hard enough." The laughter that followed wasn't from the audience. It was from her on screen. And in the real room, no one laughed. Not a single soul. The silence was thick, sharp, alive. The same silence I'd carried all night long. Now it wasn't mine anymore. Bianca turned slowly, her eyes wide, her mouth open, no sound. Someone at the next table gasped. Two sponsors exchanged glances. One woman stood and left. Another checked her phone and started packing up. Bianca tried to speak, but Felix had already killed her mic. There would be no saving it now. I walked forward, not rushed, not angry, just sure. I didn't speak to her. I didn't need to. I turned to the crowd, friends, family, investors, and held up the folder. This was going to be hers, I said. Then I dropped it into the waste bin beside the stage. No theatrics, no explanations. Just truth presented without apology. The crowd didn't clap. They didn't need to. The moment didn't call for noise. It called for clarity, and that was exactly what I gave them. When I turned to leave, I didn't look back. Bianca stood frozen in front of a room that no longer believed in her. Whatever empire she'd built on charm and polish had cracked in less than 2 minutes. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just walked into the daylight, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like anyone's mother. I felt like myself. The day after the brunch, the story didn't break through headlines or gossip columns. It spread in silence, professionally, quietly, like a shift in the air no one talks about, but everyone feels. Gianna had warned me it would happen. Once the video was seen, she said, silence would do the rest. She was right. I didn't post a statement, didn't grant an interview, didn't give the press a quote to chew on. I let the footage speak, and the silence speak louder. That morning, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt clean. I sat in the corner of the hotel cafe. Same black coffee, same napkin folded neatly across my lap. But this time, my hands were steady. Still, across the room, Felix walked in. He wasn't supposed to be there. His work ended the moment the last flute of champagne was cleared. But he saw me, and he came. No greeting, just a nod as he sat across from me. He took a sip of his drink, set it down gently, and looked me in the eye. She called me last night, he said. I asked, did you answer? He shook his head once. No, I'm not surprised, I replied. She only calls when there's something left to lose. He didn't smile, didn't argue, just sat with it. Felix had known Bianca since she was a child. He used to hand her snacks backstage while I pinned him lines. Used to believe in her, maybe even more than I did. Now, he just looked tired, not from the event, but from the truth finally catching up. They're pulling the Paris deal, he said. I nodded. I'd expected as much. Bianca had been in talks with a luxury skincare brand. TV spots, a magazine cover, even whispers of a fragrance named after her. It was all gone. One video, one truth. That's all it took. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel sad. Just ... steady. Felix reached into his coat and slid an envelope across the table. I opened it. 3 letters, handwritten, from women I hadn't spoken to in years. The first was from Elise, one of my earliest seamstresses. She had retired years ago, moved to Arizona to be near her grandchildren. She wrote that she had seen the video, and she cried, not for me, but for what it meant, for how far we fall when we forget the hands that raised us. The second was from Monica, my former assistant. She thanked me for not staying silent, said she showed the video to her own daughter as both a warning and a lesson. The third was from someone named June. I didn't recognize the name at first, until I read, you probably don't remember me, but 20 years ago, You gave me a ride home in the rain. I was the intern stuck after the gala. You told me never to apologize for taking up space. Last night, you took up the right space. I folded the letters, tucked them back in the envelope, set it gently in my bag. Felix stood. You reminded people who you really are, he said, and who she really is. Then he left. I sat there a little while longer, letting my coffee go cold again. Only this time, I didn't mind. Later that afternoon, Gianna called, her voice calm, precise. The inquiry is open, she said. That meant the Office of Adult Protective Services had officially launched a case. Bianca's behavior, the video, the wedding, the manipulation, had triggered a formal investigation. It wouldn't be loud, wouldn't be fast, but it would be real. They'd reach out to her firm, former colleagues, even to me. I told Gianna I wasn't interested in testifying. I had already said what needed to be said. Now it was Bianca's turn to answer questions. That night, I flew home to Chicago. The penthouse was pristine. Too pristine. Bianca had clearly sent someone to tidy it for my return. The fridge was stocked with almond milk I don't drink. Neatly sliced fruit in color-coded containers. Fresh white roses on the table. A card beside them. Welcome back, Mom. I tossed it in the trash. Then I opened the balcony doors. Let the cold air wash over me. The city lights blinked quietly below. Everything looked so small. Manageable. Inside, my phone buzzed. A message from one of Bianca's former clients. Hi, Lauren. I just wanted to say thank you. No explanation. No context. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Some things don't require applause. Some things are their own conclusion. And I was finally reaching mine. 2 days after I got back to Chicago, I rode the elevator to the top floor of the Whitlow building. It had been almost a year since I was last there. The last time, I'd handed over my keys to the board. No grand farewell, no champagne toast, just a quiet walk down the back stairs. But today wasn't about nostalgia. I wasn't there to design. Wasn't there to review fabrics or approve samples. I came to make something disappear. The woman at the front desk was new, nervous. She stood when she saw me. Maybe she'd seen an old press photo. Or maybe it was the way I carried myself, straight-backed, unapologetic. She asked if I had an appointment. No, I said. Call upstairs. 5 minutes later, the head of operations met me at the elevator. Carter, young, polished, dressed like the job was always 2 sizes too big. He didn't ask why I was there. He already knew. Everyone had seen the video by then. You could feel it in the way people looked down when I passed. Respect laced with discomfort. We sat. He offered me coffee. I declined. I pulled out a folder. Not the one from the wedding. A new one. Slim, clean. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was a formal withdrawal, effective immediately. There would be no more licensing of my name. No extensions. No tribute collections. No reissues. No fragrance launches with my initials. The rights to my signature line would revert to the company, but only for archival use. No one else would wear my name again. Not for profit. Not for glory. Carter read the document twice, then looked at me. Are you sure? He asked. I am, I said. I stood, shook his hand, and walked out. That was the end of Laura Whitlow the brand, but not the name. Later that same afternoon, I met with Gianna. She had cleared her calendar. Her team had already prepared a new file. This one bore a different name. The Whitlow Foundation, fully registered, structured, funded. Its mission: to support women over 60 who had experienced emotional abuse from their own families. A special grant was included for women who had been financially exploited by their children. Gianna walked me through the details. I let her talk, but my mind was somewhere else. I was thinking about the letters. Not the press, not the lawyers, not the money, the letters. Dozens had already arrived, some typed, some emailed. But the ones that mattered most, the ones that stung, were handwritten. One woman wrote about her daughter emptying her retirement account without telling her. Another said her son-in-law moved into her house, then threatened to evict her if she didn't sign over the deed. A letter came from a woman in Kansas. She had sold her engagement ring to help fund her daughter's business. Now she wasn't even allowed inside the building. These weren't strangers. These were mothers. Women who had given and given, until they didn't know how to keep anything for themselves. I saw myself in every word. Gianna asked if I wanted to chair the foundation. I told her no. I didn't want to be the face of it. I just wanted to be the start. That evening, I took a cab to the other side of the city. Not back to the penthouse, not to a gala, but to a dusty little studio I hadn't stepped into in almost a decade. It still smelled like old fabric, glue, and the faintest hint of vintage perfume. This was where it all began. Before the investors, before the boardrooms, before the runway shows, I unlocked the back room. The one where I used to keep scraps. The shelves were still there, dusty, but familiar. In the corner was a box marked only with my initials. Inside, remnants of gowns that never made it to market. Swatches embroidered with names I never got to announce. Fabric that wasn't made to follow trends. I sat on the floor, opened another box. There it was. What remained of the wedding dress Bianca had destroyed. Someone had folded it neatly, pressed it, stored it away. Maybe they didn't know what had happened to it. Maybe they did. I ran my hands over the lace, the beadwork, the silence sewn into every seam. Then I reached for my old shears, one by one. I cut each piece into long, even strips. No tears, no trembling. I wasn't destroying anything. I was creating something new. By midnight, I had 12 fabric bands, each one hand-stitched in soft slate gray. Each one said the same thing: you are not invisible. I placed them into 12 boxes. No logos, no notes. They would go to the first 12 women I'd chosen from the letters. No press, no public show, just dignity, folded, sewn, and sent with care. And in that studio, with dust in my hair and scissors in my hand, I realized something. Bianca had tried to wear my name like a crown. But real names carry weight. And sometimes, the only way to keep yours is to take it off the shelf. Strip it down and begin again. 2 weeks later, I hosted a dinner. Not a gala, not a launch, just a dinner. 12 women sat around a long oak table in a private hall near the river. No cameras, no influencers, no name tags, just women. Some in blazers, some in sweaters, some in silence. Each one had received a box from me. Each one had worn the fabric band like armor, not to show off, to remember. They didn't ask questions when I walked in. They just looked up and nodded, At the head of the table, I placed an envelope. Inside was a single-page press release, scheduled to go live that night. The headline read, Laura Whitlow transfers all personal assets to the Whitlow Foundation effective immediately. The rest was simple, clear, no drama. My penthouse had been signed over. My remaining shares liquidated. My savings, my royalties, my artwork, even my jewelry, all redirected to the Foundation's endowment. I wouldn't be poor, but I'd be light. One of the women across from me, Monica, a widow from Detroit. She leaned in and asked, "But what about your daughter?" The table quieted, not from shock, but from interest. I met her eyes and answered softly. She made her choices. Now I'm making mine. That was all. No courtroom speeches. No angry declarations. Just a line drawn in linen. That night, after dinner, we walked along the Riverwalk together. 12 women, 12 lives, 12 stories no one believed until they started telling each other. Before we said goodbye, one of them hugged me. She didn't say thank you, she said. I forgot what it felt like to be seen. I didn't cry, but I held her hand longer than I needed to. The next morning, the press release went live. It wasn't splashed across tabloids. It didn't trend. But it reached the inboxes that mattered. Within hours, Bianca called me. I didn't answer. Then she emailed. The subject line read, "What did you do?" I didn't reply. A few days later, I received a letter, handwritten, no return address. But I knew her handwriting. Bianca wrote for pages, told me I'd ruin her career, told me she wasn't the villain everyone thought. Said I humiliated her, said I'd made her look like a monster. She never once said sorry. At the end, she wrote, "I hope this was worth it." I didn't write back, but I took out a sheet of stationery and wrote 12 words. I mailed it to the Foundation's archive, where every woman who joins will read it someday. It said, "We don't rebuild to be forgiven, we rebuild to be free." And with that, I finally put down the pen, not because the story was over, but because it was finally mine.